This is LBC from Global, leading Britain's conversation. The Nigel Farage Show.
Serious, though, the whole situation with Russia is, and certainly the events that took place in Salisbury, for some of you, it might have provided welcome relief, because it's virtually been a Brexit-free week across our news media agendas. That's all going to change. David Davis is heading off on Eurostar today to get ready for early morning meetings in Brussels. The big event is coming up on Thursday evening, and that is when the 28 heads of government will be together in the room with, of course, the real bosses, the ones that haven't been voted for, Mr Barnier and Mr Juncker, and the idea is that we agree this week to a transition deal. Now, the talk was that transition deal would go on for 21 months. So here's the timetable. We are due to leave the European Union when Article 50 expires, and that happens at midnight on March the 29th next year. And then what the government wants, and appears to have agreed in principle, is a 21-month implementation period or transition period, choose whichever language you prefer, which would take us through until the end of 2020. That is what should be agreed this week. I personally don't want to have a transition period. I'd have thought the 2 years we have for Article 50 was plenty, but hey, that's life. But the committee, which is the one for exiting the EU, has published a report overnight saying that the UK should consider extending the transition period. Some members have disowned this official paper and published their own alternative, but Labour MP Hilary Benn, who heads the committee, spoke to LBC's Andrew Castle earlier on this morning.
That is absolutely not the case. Look, I voted for the Article 50 legislation, although I campaigned for Remain because I'm a Democrat and I accept the outcome of the referendum. This is not about that. This is a sober, serious, considered report drawing on the evidence that we've taken.
Well, what he really wants to do, he wants to extend the transition period, I think, until the next general election, where he hopes that Jeremy Corbyn will become Prime Minister, and Jeremy Corbyn, whatever his personal views on the European Union have been, is now completely held hostage by the Blairites that are there in the House of Commons. If that was to happen, I think we would effectively stay part of the customs union and the single market. We, in effect, might have left the Treaty of Rome, but it would be Brexit in name only. I don't trust the motives, actually, of any of these MPs who say we respect the result of the referendum, but what they really mean is we don't respect it one little bit. We'll do all we can to water down, delay, or stop Brexit from happening. That's my view. And somebody else who rather agrees with that point of view and is a member of that committee is Conservative Member of Parliament for Wellingborough, arch Brexiteer Peter Bone, who I spoke to this morning.
I'm afraid the committee has a substantial number of, to call them Remainers, ultra-Remainers who want to change the referendum result, and they do everything they can to delay the process in the hope that somehow or other they'll stop Brexit. And I have to say, I think I deserve a medal to be on that committee, to listen to the Remainers go on and on and on about complete rubbish is amazing.
I tell you what, Peter, I'm ahead of you in that queue because I've had 19 years in the European Parliament being surrounded by these people. But I mean, Mrs May heads out to Brussels on Thursday. It's a key summit. What do you want to see come from that?
Well, we've got this implementation period, which I'm not really think it's necessary, but we're going to have it. It's going to be shortened. So rather than the Remainers on my committee, which want a lengthened one, it's actually going to be shortened. And we just got to crack on. It's only now just over a year until we come out. Can't wait for that. And if we can't get an implementation period, so what? We'll come out on WTO rules, and that's no bad thing.
Well, you may say that, but I don't think the Prime Minister thinks that position would be acceptable. I mean, ultimately, Peter, she is going to come back to the House of Commons with a deal. There is going to be a vote that takes place in October, November this year that will be, in terms of Parliament's history, one of the biggest votes ever, given that Gina Miller won that case at the Supreme Court, and it has to be a meaningful vote. My question is, does Hilary Benn today represent a point of view that could have a majority in Parliament?
Yes, he absolutely he could, and there are many Labour MPs and Remainers, and a few on my side. But as I understand it, if we reject the deal that's put forward by Mrs. May, then we come out with no deal. So from that point of view, it doesn't really matter. So I think all these Remainers are jumping up and down saying we can have a meaningful vote. Well, yeah, you either accept the deal that Mrs. May negotiates, which will be the best she can get for the country, or we don't have a deal. So from that point of view, I'm slightly relaxed.
If there was a majority that rejected the deal, I put it to you, there'd be a majority in favour of having a second referendum.
Well, I'm not sure a second referendum isn't, but what would worry me, to be honest, what would worry me is if we lost the vote on the deal, would that require a general election? That might be the issue. And of course, then if a general election and Corbyn got in, well, goodness knows what would happen to the country, but Brexit would sail away and not happen. So that would be, I think, probably my worry about losing the vote, that it might participate in general election.
So a loss of the vote. So if I'm Theresa May and I lose this crucial vote, the only way I can avoid a general election, particularly if the polls say I'm going to lose, is to offer a second referendum. I still put it to you, Peter Bone, and I don't want to see this, but unless Parliament gets behind whatever deal the Prime Minister does, a second referendum is on the cards.
I don't think so. Certainly Mrs. May would never support a second referendum. And we are talking lots of hypotheticals. I actually think what's going to happen is, because the EU knows it's massively in their commercial interest to do a deal. I mean, that's the thing you've got to remember. You've got to overcome their sort of political bias. But £80 billion a year, they sell more to us than we to them, so they must want to do a deal. So there's lots to watch, there's lots to fight for. But at the moment, I still think we're on course for Mrs. May to deliver a very good Brexit, in which case we shall carry her through the streets of Wellingborough and build a statue to her.
Well, I have to say, on balance, I think Mrs. May will just about win that final vote in the House of Commons. I do think we're on track to leave the Treaty of Rome on the 29th of March next year. I suspect the Brexit we get will be one that is quite heavily watered down from what a lot of people who voted Brexit thought they were going to get, taking back control of our fisheries, etc. I don't see any of that happening in the short term. I'm not even a fan of the transition period at all. I've always said and feared through LBC that what would happen is it would get extended up until the next general election. So I'm going to ask you this morning, do you agree with Hilary Benn? Do you want to see the transition period extended, probably up until the next general election, or would that effectively be an attempt to betray the Brexit vote? So let me know what you think on that. You can call 0345 6060 973. You can text to 84850. You can tweet using the hashtag Farage and LBC at LBC, and you can watch us on Facebook and comment there too. Keith is my first caller on this subject, and he's from Stoke Newington. Hi, Keith.
Oh, yes. Hello, Nigel. Good morning. Yes, I totally agree with you. This is a device to facilitate a delay to the Brexit issue, and it's going to facilitate the EU to come up or devise more reasons why the delay should occur. And that is unreasonable, and we shouldn't accept it at all. But the other point I want to make as well is that regarding the last conversation, Theresa May stood up very strongly to the Russians, showing she could do it. And my question is, why isn't she doing the same with the EU situation? Why is she being weak with them?
Well, I think Peter Hitchens answered that about an hour ago on this programme by saying it's quite easy to stand up to sort of a foreign government that in some ways is a little bit abstract, as opposed to worrying about your parliamentary majority, having constant pressure put on you by big businesses and big banks and big donors. So I guess the situation is different. But Keith, I think the one thing, the biggest single criticism of Theresa May has been that she's not a leader. She doesn't have that leadership ability. And I guess many would say that she's shown a bit of leadership over the course of the last few days. Keith, let's hope she takes that spirit with her to Brussels. I'd love to see her say to Barnier and Juncker, look, I want to have a sensible conversation, but there's a limit to the amount of abuse and bullying we're going to put up with from unelected bureaucrats like you. Do you know what, Keith? If she said that at a press conference in Brussels, the country would say, wow!
Yes, I agree. Absolutely. She would do a Thatcherite, wouldn't she?
Well, in fact, it would be even greater than Margaret Thatcher coming back in 1984 from the Fontainebleau conference, having won us a rebate. That was important, but this is now, crucial. It's the biggest political issue of our lifetimes.
Yes, I agree.
And she's losing. She's losing a lot of confidence from Brexit voters.
Because she's being weak.
Yeah.
She mustn't.
Do you think, Keith, that a new Theresa May has emerged from that market square in Salisbury, and she's going to go sock it to them on Thursday?
Yeah, I don't well hope so. It may be the seed of a change in her attitude. Let's hope it is.
Well, let's see. Keith, I thank you. Nigel, I didn't vote for any kind of Brexit. I voted for independence. The word Brexit has many flavours. Independence means what it says Graham. Well, Graham, I was the leader, of course, of the UK Independence Party. So difficult for me to disagree with that, but I'm sure there are lots of you who will come on the phone and tell me why the transition period needs to be longer. Is it about lorries and Dover? Are there real technical reasons why this ought to be suspended? You're listening to the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC, and the time is now 11:15. It's a very snowy Sunday morning in many parts of the country, in the West Country and South Wales being particularly hard hit at this moment in time, and a lot of disappointed people at Heathrow Airport and elsewhere today. We will, in 10 minutes' time, be getting John Ketley on the line to give us a sort of update as to how long. Now, the last one was called The Beast from the East. I'm told this is called The Mini Beast because it won't last quite as long, but John Ketley will bring us fully up to speed. So the arguments for extending transition, which we heard earlier on from Hilary Benn, a lot of it is technical. A lot of it is to do with borders. It's to do with, well, if you're outside the customs union and there are tariffs applicable, there needs to be some measuring of what lorries come in, what lorries go out, and what goods they've got on them. Because, by the way, do bear in mind, we do actually trade with the rest of the world as well, and we do seem to manage, but hey. But I can see where the argument goes, because in the pro-Remain Mail on Sunday, Brexit's 2-minute border bombshell, which shows that if every lorry took 2 minutes longer to get through that tunnel at Folkestone or on the ferries at Dover, that actually the traffic would be backed up almost all the way to Ashford, and this would go on for the next 10, 20, 100,000 years. I don't know, but it would be a disaster, and this is really being used as an argument for not just extending the transition period, but for staying part of a customs union of some kind. And they say here, you don't believe us? Then check out Norway's smart border with Sweden. Right, so that was the pro-Remain Mail on Sunday. Go to the pro-Leave Sunday Telegraph. Could this Scandinavian smart border be a blueprint for Britain's post-EU trade, where they explain that actually, goods and services and transport moves between Canada and Sweden fairly easily. And I could point you to Detroit, that border with Canada, where there are quite a lot of goods that are not under NAFTA, so there are tariffs payable. And how do they do it? Well, they do it with number plate recognition, which, of course, we already have in many parts of this country. Anyone driving a motor car into London at certain or most times of the week is liable to pay congestion charge. And how does it work there? Well, the Canadians taking stuff into America or the Americans taking stuff into Canada have to fill out half an hour before they cross an online form saying the goods that they've got. And this happens already. We do a vast amount of trade with China, all right? But we don't check the contents of every single Chinese container. There has to actually be an element of trust to make things work, and that happens with our trade with China, and it'll happen, in my view, on the Irish border. But these are many of the technical arguments that are used for transition existing in the first place, and now for it being extended. And I'm not pretending there isn't a lot to do. We've been part of this EU regime, for 45 years. So there is a lot to do. I personally never wanted transition in the first place. But let's go to Northern Ireland. Let's go to Aaron, who was a Remain voter. Good morning, Aaron.
Good morning, Nigel. How are you?
I'm well. So you are literally on the front line of the whole Brexit debate there.
I'm practically next to one of the bordering lines of Northern Ireland.
Okay, so whereabouts are you, Aaron?
Limma Valley. It's in the northwest. It's just 19 miles outside of Derry, Londonderry, so it is.
Okay.
And that's a bordering city, so it is.
Yeah. So clearly, I mean, one thing, Aaron, that always struck me was, whenever I talk to my friends in the DUP, the last thing they want is a return to the bad old days and hard borders and soldiers with guns. When I was in Dublin recently, I speak to people in Dublin, and nobody wants a return to the bad old days and hard borders and soldiers with guns. It's almost as if, Aaron, to me, it's sort of Monsieur Barnier that's made this a bigger problem than it needs to be.
Well, no, it's as much as you would say you're friends with the DUP are after a hard border. They always have been, which is unfortunate, but it's true they may say otherwise, but as recently it came out over certain scandals within Northern Ireland, we have found out that a lot of meetings, for certain meetings, minutes haven't actually been kept. So we don't really know exactly what's been said behind closed doors because they didn't keep meetings to frustrate freedom of information, and because the DUP and Sinn Féin are sensitive to criticism, which doesn't really paint us in much of a nice light, or them, to be fair.
Now, Aaron, what I'm told is that the really big issue with this border are products like milk and beef, that they're the ones that crisscross that border on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So isn't there a common sense solution here? Don't we ask our friends in the EU, and don't we ask the World Trade Organization, perhaps in Switzerland, what about there being made some special exemptions in the case of Ireland so that Brexit doesn't wreak huge damage on the agricultural sector of Ireland? Wouldn't that be a sort of common sense way of dealing with this?
See, that has been approached and that has been brought up because there is a lot of farmland as well that's actually on the border.
Yeah.
There's a house that's on the border. The front of the house is in the north and the back of the house is in the Republic. It's a really...
Is that really true?
It is, yeah. There is an actual house.
Wow.
I think it's in County Down, where the north of the house is in County Down and the back of the house is in the Republic County.
Given Aaron, look, whatever happens here, these are not just complex, but actually quite emotive arguments when it comes to Northern Ireland. And they've been, in my view, made more emotive by the European Commission than they need to be. But do you, as a Remainer, someone living close to the border, do you have a sympathy with Hilary Benn when he asks for the transition period to be extended?
Well, yeah, it's because our border has been really a sticking point for negotiations whenever they're going. There's been plans suggested, and it's unfortunately the DUP have blocked them, was talking about Northern Ireland staying within the single market, along with the Republic, obviously.
Well, what about the Republic leaving the European Union? I mean, it's not doing them much good these days, is it?
But it's up to the Republic if they want to stay in the EU or not. As much as this is one country, it's divided into two. It's Northern Ireland and the Republic. I voted to remain for the obvious reasons that I thought it would be best for us to remain. But whenever the vote came out and we were saying to leave, I accepted that. It was like democratic will. But like I said, your researcher, when it came down to it, it was England and Wales that unanimously voted to leave, and Scotland and Northern Ireland voted to remain. Now, I'm not pushing for a second referendum, even though I thought that the vote at the end of it was very close. It was very close, to be fair. But I accept the fact that we're leaving the EU, but I think that our representatives here need to be doing more for the people instead of just for their hardline voter base.
Aaron, how long... You see, now, I said at the top of the hour, perhaps somewhat cynically, that I don't believe Hilary Benn respects the referendum result at all, and I think he wants to extend transition to the next general election, hoping that Corbyn wins and we stay effectively part of the single market and the customs union. How long do you think that transition period should be extended for?
I think the transition period should just be extended until If our border can be sorted out before the actual date that we leave, happy days. But we've gone the last 15 months now without an actual government in this country. So I don't actually know how long would be. I don't know personally myself. I wouldn't be able to say how long a transition period would be, because at the moment we don't even have a government that can agree on anything.
Stormont is dormant, isn't it? As you say, there is no government there.
No.
Aaron, I understand what you're saying. I understand the sensitivities. I just worry that the argument for extending, why not extend it for 5 years or 10 years or 20 years or forever, or why not just forget we ever left the single market in the first place? That's my problem. Aaron, I thank you very much indeed. I'm going to run to Pete, who's calling from Aylesbury. Good morning, Pete.
Good morning, Nigel. Good goodness, I'm through to the man himself. Transition, what does it mean to me? Transition means we're going from one place to another. If we have a transition period, we're going absolutely nowhere until the 11th minute of the 11th hour of the 11th day. So it's a complete and utter waste of time. Why can't there be some kind of impetus behind what works in cross-border situation? Why can't the situation between Canada and America? You mentioned lorries crossing the border.
Yeah.
People go out for a night out from Canada to the States and then back again with no hassle at all. If the people of Northern Ireland, I was listening to what Aaron was saying, he seems quite fearful of the problems that could arise from this. I don't think the DUP will be against this.
Nor do I. Do you know what? Nor do I. But I wanted to listen to what Aaron had to say, because, you know, I do understand he's living near the border. There's a horrible history. So but Pete, I actually blame the European Commission for stirring this up, and Blair saying the Good Friday Agreement could be under threat. I mean, they're all doing this deliberately.
And Ben's dad's turning in his grave.
Well, Tony Benn was vehemently opposed to membership of the European Union because he believed in democracy, and he was a strong patriot. He told me that to my very face. He believed in the country, and he even flew Spitfires in, I think, 1944, 45. He would be, one suspects...
He would be a Farage of the past, wouldn't he?
Well, I don't know about that. Pete, we didn't vote for transition, did we?
But please do what you can to get Richard Tice and your mates to really play up the ease of transition border-wise across the Great Lakes area. Let everybody here know how damned easy it is over there to do this without having machine guns on the post.
All you need is the political will, Pete. I thank you. And those that disagree with Pete, call 0345 6060 973. You're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:30. Hilary Benn and a number of MPs who were part of the Exiting the EU committee want the transition period to be extended. The reasons given are chiefly technical. They're to do with lorries going in and out through Dover and solving the Irish border. But I'm asking, do you want this transition period extended, or do you see it, frankly, as a watering down, if not even a betrayal of Brexit? But before I get there, big story in The Observer today, a very arresting picture of a guy called Christopher Wildey with orange-dyed hair and a nose ring, which is a distraction from the story in some ways. And the story is about a firm called Cambridge Analytica. And it is a complicated story, but basically yesterday, Facebook suspended Cambridge Analytica from using their products. Why? Because Cambridge were about harvesting data. And data is very valuable for people that fight elections. And the story is they harvested more data than they were legally entitled to do and didn't remove it. That is the accusation that Facebook are making against Cambridge Analytica. I can't comment on the truth of that whatsoever. But it is a story. I promise you this one is going to run and run. Why? Well, because Steve Bannon was one of the directors back in 2014 of Cambridge Analytica. And Cambridge Analytica themselves perhaps have talked about the victory of Trump and been much said in this country about what role did they or did they not play in the referendum campaign. And of course, everybody from Robert Mercer, the businessman that's their big backer, through Bannon, through everybody else. Of course, what will happen is it won't be very long before my name is in the middle of all of it, because I just happen to have met or know the players. I've never worked with or for Cambridge Analytica. Yes, of course, I've met the directors and people that run it. I have to confess, when it comes to the high arts of technology, I'm probably one of the least qualified people to comment in the world. What I will say is that the accusation that's going to get made is that illegal data was used in the American election, and they'll start to ask the question, was illegally held data used in the referendum? I just want to say this. To my knowledge, Cambridge Analytica played little or no role in the UK referendum campaign. They would, had Leave.eu won the nomination, have played a very big role, but Vote Leave won the nomination to run the referendum, not Leave.eu. And as far as America's concerned, well, again, to the best of my knowledge, the guy that did the big digital media for Donald Trump in the campaign was a man called Brad Pascal, big 6'8", Brad Pascal. And Brad has now been appointed, of course, Trump's campaign manager for his re-election bid in 2020. And to my knowledge, Cambridge did not play a big or significant role in that election at all. So there we are. And I'm saying those things hand on heart, believing them to be absolutely true. But I think you'll see more of this story. I'm told there's more news to come out, so we'll kind of watch this space. Back to an extended transition period, and Robin Eltham has a strong view. He says, are they having a ... laugh? We voted out. Get out now. We didn't ever vote for transition periods. This is blatant stalling till the next election. It's so blatant. Well, Rob, I have to say, I didn't vote for transition at all. I voted to leave. Mohammed from Wembley says, morning, Nigel. My view is that as soon as the leave vote was confirmed, the transition period had started. And Mohammed, it took them 9 months to trigger Article 50. We had the admission on the Ian Dale show last Thursday from Osborne, who'd been the Chancellor, that they deliberately, willfully not got the civil service to make any alternative plans if there was a leave vote. And I have to say, I myself thought 2 years for Article 50, surely we can sort the whole thing out before then, and yet here we are. Theresa May should tell the EU in plain English to stop making stupid, idiotic threats, or the UK will revert to WTO rules without any further notice. If they don't understand that, hard luck. Richard in Chelsea. Well, she's been like that with Russia. You never know. We could see a different Prime Minister on Thursday. Don't hold your breath, though. Let's ask Kathy, who was calling from Abingdon. Kathy, do you want to see this transition period extended? Does Hilary Benn have a fair point?
Hello, Nigel. It's an honour to speak to you.
Good morning.
I have to say that. No, we need absolutely no transition. People have got to understand that the EU agenda is nothing to do with trade. It's all about stalling, like you said, till the next election, and it is all about pumping in immigration. They are trying to keep Ireland separated so they can still plan to put in their million through Ireland, which will still come into us. We need to shut the borders. Their EU agenda continues, and people out there really need to wake up and listen to what Sir James Goldsmith said. He told us all about this. This has nothing to do with trade. Russia's a smokescreen. All this stalling is all smoke screens so they continue, and they are continuing every day with their EU immigration agenda.
What is that, Kathy?
Europe.
Kathy, what do you think the EU's immigration agenda is?
To destroy Europe.
To destroy Europe or to change?
Look at what's happening today now in Madrid. It's all been hidden. Everybody's been hidden what's going on in Sweden, in Germany. It's all been hidden.
So you're talking about the numbers that have been let in across the Mediterranean and the lack of integration, yeah?
It's way beyond integration. There is no such thing as integration.
But do you actually,
Kathy,
who would want... Who in the European Commission? I mean, they might want to fundamentally change Europe. And look, one of Tony Blair's top advisors said, they wanted to diversify Britain and rub the noses in the right in it and change society. Yeah. But who of them would be doing this to want to destroy Europe?
Oh, well, that's to be exposed yet. That piece of jigsaw, I cannot say. I have not found that piece of jigsaw yet, but it's starting to become more clear every day.
But why would they... Why, Kathy? And look, nobody has publicly been more critical of the Juncker-Merkel ludicrous idea of we can cope with whoever comes in and no checks. And as you well know, in the referendum, I used that photograph. of that column of people.
Yes, which is correct.
No women, no children, no elderly, no disabled, all young men, very few of whom would ever qualify to be refugees. But Kathy, who would actually want this to destroy Europe? What motive?
I think it's because basically the EU is owned by massive bankers and it's a supremacist parliament. It's an Orwellian idea, basically. That's where we're going. We want an Orwellian type Europe, which is controlled by an elite supremacist parliament.
Kathy, strong views. Thank you for your call. And Kathy there from Abingdon, who thinks they actually want to just keep the doors open and to destroy us. And that's a reason why some politicians may want to extend transit. But it is true, of course, and you may disagree with some of the things Kathy was saying there. But what is true is that those who wish us to extend the transition period, those who would effectively reverse the effect of the referendum vote, are those who support continued open borders with Europe. James is a first-time caller from Barnes in south-west London. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Very nice to speak to you. Nigel, in the House of Lords last week, Lord MP, I'm sure you know him, MP.
From Northern Ireland, yep.
Gave a very analytical, forensic analysis of the trade situation between the Republic of Ireland and Northern Ireland.
Yep.
And it is 1.5% of trade goes from the Northern Ireland to the Republic of Ireland. And would you believe it's 1.5% of trade that comes from the Republic of Ireland to Northern Ireland across those borders? 1.5% of each of the two countries' trades.
Well, I don't know about the 1.5%, Joe. What I do know, James, is that of Irish-owned...
Lord MP's figures you can check them, and they come. I mean, he is quoting the official statistics.
But what I do know is that for many Republic of Ireland farmers, the UK market is vital. That little thing I do know.
Oh yes, of course. But I mean, he gave I mean, I do suggest that, Nigel, that to bolster your own arguments, that you listen to his to take the recording of that.
Well, do you know what? I haven't, James, and I will. But I haven't, and I will. I did listen to Bertie Ahern, the former Taoiseach, who said, "Look, all we need to do here is to adopt some common sense. It's not the end of the world to sort this out." James, all problems in life can be solved with will, can't they?
There's a will, Nigel. There's a way, and I'm afraid that we are having logs thrown in our path in every direction. But I mean, you must keep, if you don't mind me saying, Nigel, you must keep ploughing on at the criticism and analysis of the civil service, because that is where your biggest roadblock lies, in the Treasury and in the
I think
the vital departments.
I think, James, for Brexiteers to describe the civil servants in the Treasury and the Foreign Office, and we see when they're retired or leave, so somebody comes on to condemn Brexit, to describe them, James, as a roadblock is moderate language, well suited to a Sunday morning. And thank you very much indeed for your call. In a minute, John Ketley with the weather. For now, you're listening to the Sunday edition of the Nigel Farage Show, exclusively on LBC. It's 11:46. But of course, there's a huge debate about Russia and the poisoning scandal and Brexit and how Mrs May's going to get on when she goes to Brussels on Thursday. But actually, that's not really what you're talking about today, is it? Now, what you're all talking about is, of course, the return of the snow. And I have to tell you that during the middle of the second half yesterday, when it was obvious to me that England were going to lose to Ireland, I took the kids, I live on the North Downs, and we went tobogganing, and I rather enjoyed it. It was great. But for today, a lot of people have seen rugby and football matches cancelled. There are amber warnings and yellow warnings for snow and ice covering large parts of the UK. We're even told up to 10 inches of snow is expected to fall in certain places, and some disappointed people too at Heathrow Airport. Well, John Ketley is a weatherman, and he joins us now. Good morning, John.
Yeah, good morning, Nigel.
Could you define to us a mini beast? This is what I read in my newspapers.
Well, we had it's a deja vu situation, this, isn't it? 2 weeks ago we spoke on the programme, and that was a real maxi beast, wasn't it? That was coming in from Western Russia, and that went on for several days, and it really was something of a beast. Now this one is a mini beast because it's only happening for 2 days, and things are going to start to ease considerably as we go through this coming week. But having said that, there is a lot of heavy snow around still at the moment. It's just that during the week there'll be no snow at all, but there will be some hard frost right the way through until probably Thursday.
Is it any possibility, John, that the mini beast comes from Russia as well?
Yes, indeed. It is coming from the Baltic states at the very least. So, yes, I'm not pointing fingers.
No,
I
can see a good conspiracy brewing here. I really can.
Well, I'm going to leave conspiracy to you, Nigel. It's your position, not mine. But I can tell you about the weather.
Very sweet of you. So tell us, what's the picture out there? And I've seen sort of the southwest, South Wales expecting heavy snow. Tell us what's going on out there.
Yeah, well, we've got snow showers still affecting the south and east of Scotland, across the Pennines and much of Wales, certainly. But I think the worst of it now is more confined to the West Country. So if you're looking from the Isle of Wight westwards into Wales and Devon, Somerset in particular, Bristol area, that's being very badly hit now with some heavy snow. It has caused cancellations with the rugby, for example, at Gloucester, although I think in Gloucester itself there hasn't been too much snow. It's a bit further west and south from there. But there are some more snow showers just showing the hand coming in across into Kent as well, back in from the continent. So we're not done with it yet. And this big band of snow that's affecting the West Country especially is just pivoting for the next 12 hours or so. So it's going to be around for the rest of today and into the first half of tonight. There will be considerable snow and there will be further drifting. Just as we had with the Maxi Beast, it is going to be drifting up across the Dartmoor and places like that. It'll be very difficult to get traffic through the small roads.
Yeah. No, and John, so it's 2 snowfalls in March. Can you tell us that once the mini beast is over, there'll be no more snow?
No, I'm not going to tell you that, Nigel, because I think it's only fair now. I'm speaking to you. I'm speaking to a legend, and you could be the first person to hear from me that this is not the end of the snow this month. It is a truism. And I have told a few people that over many years that it is more likely to snow on Easter Day than it is on Christmas Day. And at the moment, the suggestion would be that the cold weather comes back for Easter.
Whoa!
Wow. It's not great news, is it? But
no, well, it's John. Thank you, and of course, Easter. Well, my birthday's early April, and I've had snow on my birthday more.
Yeah.
I think living on the North Downs in Kent, growing up there, than we ever had on Christmas Day. John Ketley, thanks very much indeed.
My pleasure.
Grave warnings there from John Ketley. If you're getting ready for the big Easter egg hunt, you may need to make sure the kids have got fur-lined boots. The cold weather is coming back for Easter. Wow. Back to transition. Hilary Benn, how long should it be extended for? Or is it all a nonsense and a watering down and somewhat of a betrayal of Brexit? I'm going to ask Richard in Manningtree that very question. Good morning.
Good morning, Nigel. Very interesting programme.
Good.
My question to you, man of all the immense knowledge of what the goings-on in the EU is, you're talking about, or they're talking about, a 2-year transitional period. I wonder if you could shed any light on the fact that I read in the news the other week, and I haven't heard it discussed by anybody, actually. This so-called payment into the EU coffers will continue until 2064.
Yes, that's right. In fact, 75% of the 40 billion so-called leaving bill, I'm not sure why there's one at all, but anyway, 75% of it is going to get paid, Richard, in the next 3 to 5 years. And thereafter, it's proposed that we go on paying, a sum of money for access to their markets. Although, given the number of German motor cars I saw on the road this morning, Richard, maybe they should be paying us until 2064 for access to our market.
Agree with you. I mean, it's all a nonsense, isn't it? We all know this. I mean, it's just a nonsense. They just want to drag it out for as long as possible and hope everything will go away and we'll forget about it.
The thing is, Richard, and there was a text I had earlier on the show which really summed it up beautifully. The person said, "I voted for independence," right?
Yes.
Not for some complex Brexit process that lasts for decades. We voted for independence. And the real problem, Richard, is that our leaders don't want to make a clean break of this. If you listen to what Theresa May said in Florence in that speech, we're leaving the Treaty of Rome, but we're going to sign back up to virtually everything else. So that, in effect, we could get Brexit in name only. My one big hope, Richard, is that we do leave that treaty on the 29th of March next year. But even when we've done that, there are going to be a lot more battles to fight, I suspect, in the years to come.
Oh, absolutely, I agree. I mean, it's just, I think, really and truthfully, I'm just so shocked, really. I always knew politics was a dirty game, but this goes beyond all this now. I mean, it's just unreal.
Richard, I mean, we were asking this question in the first hour this morning, but are you one of those people whose faith in politics and our leaders has gone down over the years?
Oh, you've read me, haven't you? Yeah.
Richard from Manningtree, thank you. I've got time for one more caller this morning. It's Harry from Red Hill. Good morning, Harry.
Hiya, I just want to say thank you for getting me into politics, because your speeches in the EU have made me inspired to actually follow politics now.
Well, that's terrific. I'm delighted. And are you inspired into politics because you like what I said or hate what I said?
Oh, I love it, what you said. Look, now, after watching a few of your speeches in the EU, I've followed you now for a long time.
Terrific. So, Harry, you know, we've got Hilary Benn saying that it's all too complicated. The lorries are going to be stuck at Dover. We'll never deal with the Irish border. Let's extend transition. And as I said earlier, I suspect to the next election. How do you feel about that?
Oh, we should be leaving on June the 24th this year. We should have been leaving then. Should have been Article 50 triggered after the referendum, and we're leaving no transition period straight away. We're leaving. If we get a deal, that's good. But I'd be happy with no deal, because no deal is better than a bad deal. Simple as. By definition, it must be.
If you said to somebody in the street, do you know what, I've got a really bad deal for you, guess what they'd say? They'd say no. I agree with that. Harry, it's nice to talk to you. I thought all of your generation were pro-Brexit. That's what the newspapers tell me.
No, my family and everything, they helped me grow up to be a 19-year-old who supports Brexit, and I defy my generation by proudly supporting Brexit.
Well done. And that's exactly what the Italians did, isn't it? 60% of the under-30s in Italy voted for sceptical parties. Harry, gotta go. It's the end of the Nigel Farage show today on LBC. I'm back tomorrow at 7. At 3 this afternoon, it's Alex Salmond. But up next, it's Majid Nawaz.
Thank you, Nigel.